welcome back to the Adobe Live YouTube channel. My name is Brittney Megann. I'm the CEO and head socialista of Socials and Stilettos, and I've partnered with Adobe Live to bring you this exclusive 8-part series on how to build an iconic brand with Adobe Express from scratch. I am so excited. This series is literally going to cover everything, and whether you're somebody who is just popping into branding for the first time, you're starting your first business, you're getting started in the creator space, or you just want to know a little bit about branding, this series is going to be for you. We've really jam-packed it with everything that you need to know to create an iconic brand from start to finish. And in today's episode, we're going to be starting from the basis, which is crafting your brand strategy and everything that you need to know to make sure that your brand is rooted in a strong foundation. Are you ready? Let's jump in. I think we need to first start off with what is iconic branding. And I think that a lot of people, whether you hear the word branding a lot or this is your first time, I want you to stop for a second and think about the strongest brands that you know and ask yourself, what is it that draws you to them? What about them is really bringing you back? What about it is making you feel fulfilled when you buy something from that brand or you read a piece of their content? What is kind of that rooted thing that brings you back to loving them and coming back time after time after time again? And I'm going to tell you, it's not their logo. It's not the color palette that they use, although I'm going to say whenever I see a pink brand, I am pretty much sold. I'm going to tell you it really comes down to the way that you feel about what they're delivering to you, whether that be content, whether that be the products that they're creating or the experience that their products are giving you. So I think when we look at branding altogether, I want to first and foremost start off by saying it is not your logos. Yes, those are a big part. It's not your color palette, although that also plays a big part. Really, before we even jump into those fun, aesthetic things, we really need to nail down your strategy. And you might be sitting there rolling your eyes and thinking I've heard this before. I just want to get to the fun stuff, but I want to explain to you, without a proper solidified strategy in place, your brand identity is not going to work for you. It's only going to go so far, but better yet, I feel it's also important to remember that your brand aesthetic, your identity, what your brand looks like, the colors you use, the fonts you choose, the logo that you have, should all come back to the strategy that was put in place before you even stepped into that. A lot of the times when people skip this step of developing a brand strategy, what ends up happening is their identity does not deliver what they were hoping for it to deliver. And I think that is something that I learned the hard way when I was first starting my marketing agency, because I just thought to myself at the time, this is way before I stepped into the world of branding, that I just need a logo so that I can plop it on my website, so that I can put it wherever. When it comes to color palette, I'll just choose, whatever everyone else is using that's trending at the moment, when in reality, I was actually missing the mark on what not only was authentic to me, but what my audience was going to be drawn in by. And now if you take a peek at the Socials and Stilettos branding, I love using ours as an example. We are not your typical marketing agency. Our color palette is predominantly pink with an accent color of this fiery orange and some neutral colors for balancing. But this palette is really what we're remembered by. Most importantly, that palette is speaking to our brand values, our brand mission, what makes us unique. So in this specific episode, we're going to be going through a couple of things that you are going to want to consider when you're crafting your brand strategy. And not to mention, I've even put together an in-depth brand questionnaire that's going to help walk you through this process. So you've got a little bit of homework before the next episode, but we're going to do this together, and I want you to know that I'm here to support you every single step of the way. So let's start off with the strategy and where you're going to start. This questionnaire has 8 very strategically thought out questions that are going to help you develop your overall brand strategy. Starting with number 1, it's time to get clear on the big picture vision for your brand. what is it that you want? What is that end goal for you? What are you visioning when it comes to this new brand that you're developing? And whether you're a content creator, or whether you're starting a e-commerce brand, or whether you're starting a marketing agency like me, what is that kind of big picture vision for you? What do you want to create? Think about it and be as specific as you can. Next question, who are you trying to reach? Let's get crystal clear on our audience. What do they look like? Where do they hang out? What do they do in their free time? I want you to get really crystal clear on how they live their day-to-day life. What brands are they loving right now? What are their values? What do they look like? What are the things that are important to them? Are they somebody who likes to shop in a mall? Are they somebody that loves to shop online? Do they love looking for a hot deal, or are they somebody who loves luxury goods? These are all things that you're going to want to consider when it comes to really thinking about your audience. And the more specific that you can be with them, the better. And I think that almost naming them can sometimes be helpful. For me, I remember when I was first starting Socials and Stilettos, I thought to myself, I'm serving a few different kinds of people. What do you do when you don't just have one audience that you're serving? And I want to say that that is okay too. And if you need to, kind of group the types of people that you are serving with this new brand, again, whether you're a business, whether you're a content creator, wherever you're at, that is okay too. You can think of maybe 1 to 3 different personas, we'll say, and really start thinking about those unique people and what they're into, what their lifestyle is like really getting specific on that. Do they have kids? Do they not? You could really go so honed in on this. And again, I really want to say that the more specific you are, the better, because what this is really going to allow you to do from a marketing perspective even is really start to think about where you can connect and find and network with these people as you're building your brand. From the brand development and design standpoint, where this is really going to help you is when it comes down to choosing your color palette, choosing your fonts, designing your logo, creating your brand imagery. You're going to be able to consider the things that they already love and are drawn to, so that helps you create a brand that is essentially magnetic to them. And that's what we want, right? We want that effortless, magnetic piece of a business or a brand so that we don't have to work harder, but we can work smarter. Next up, what values are important to your brand? I want to say that if you find that your values are kind of getting mixed up with your own personal things that are important to you or the things that you value in life, that's also completely normal. Because when I was first starting Socials and Stilettos, one of the biggest things to me was that I really wanted to work with female entrepreneurs. I was so passionate about seeing other women win and being the person to support them with their big picture vision, because I felt like I didn't get that along the way. So that is something that I feel like is poured into my business in so many different ways, whether that be the organizations that we support, the charities that we support, whether it be the communities that we're involved in, or simply the audience that we serve. It flows into my business in so many different ways. And although it's a personal value, a personal mission, at the end of the day, you are the most important person behind this operation. I'm telling you firsthand, the more that you can hone in on what makes you unique, the more that you can bring that into your brand and ultimately eliminate the competition, because nobody can beat you. Next question is, how is your brand different from others in this space? And this is something that I don't want to come across as saying, look into your competitors, because I really, personally, I don't think competitors are even a thing. I think that it's safe to say we have other players in the same space as us, but every brand is so unique and you are creating something that's different than anybody else. So really, there is no competition. The only competition is really actually going to be yourself, if we're being real. But I think it's important to consider where there's gaps in the space and where you can show up in a way that is maybe filling those gaps and bringing something new to the table that nobody else is doing. So paying attention to other players in the space and thinking about what are they doing that I could do differently, that I could, you know, bring to light in a different way, or what are they not doing that I could do? And I think really considering it from that lens is going to really allow you to, again, step into that iconic branding and really make sure that you are separating yourself from the rest. Now we're getting into something that people do not talk about enough, which is your brand voice. How do you want your brand to sound? Do you want to sound extra? Because that was mine. I definitely didn't. I wanted to sound like everybody's girlfriend. So when you read our content, you feel like you just already know, love, and trust us. Like you already have that relationship with Socials and Stilettos, even though we may have never chatted, we may have never had, you know, a call before or talked about your business or even ever met face-to-face before. The first time that you come to our website, our Instagram page, any social platform that we're on, or just hear me speak like in this video, I want you to think that is one girl's girl, extra person. I want my brand to sound like everybody's best friend. Like it is sassy and spicy and fun and energetic and outgoing. These are all words that I really wanted to make sure was being encompassed in my brand voice. And I want you to think about what you want to sound like. Do you want to sound very professional and very elevated? Do you want to have vocabulary that sounds very, you know, advanced? Do you want to be a little bit more down to earth? Do you want to sound very nurturing and motherly? Whatever it is, I want you to think of how you want to sound. And this could be very similar to the way that you organically sound. I am very much of an outgoing, bubbly, extra person, but not everybody is. And I want to say that not every brand needs to be successful. Next up, what problems are you solving for your audience? And you might be thinking about this, especially if you're a content creator. You might be thinking, wait a second, like what am I solving? But at the end of the day, every single piece of content is going to be valuable in one way or another. Everything that you're offering your audience, products, content, you know, podcasts, whatever it is that you're creating, it's going to be valuable in one way or another. If it's a product, what problems are your products solving? If it's content, what problems are your content solving? Really think about your audience and the things that they might be struggling with and how you can help them move through that with either your products, content, or service. Now that we've really kind of dived into our audience, our values, our mission, our language that we want to be using, it's time to really consider how you want your brand to look and feel. And this is something that only you are gonna know. I feel like everything here, only you would know. Don't try to look at what other people are doing in the space, because I think that it's really easy to get into this wormhole. And I'm gonna speak from experience, because when I first started Socials and Stilettos, let me tell you, my first thing that I did was exactly what you shouldn't do when you're starting a brand, which is looking at what everybody else is doing in the space. I remember sitting to myself and thinking, well, at the time, way back when I first started this agency, it was trendy to, and I know everybody's gonna know exactly what I talk about when I say this, have those like boho hats, and everybody was a neutral color palette and everyone was doing the same thing. And I remember thinking to myself, like, well, gosh, like I am not a neutral Nancy. No offense if your name is Nancy. I'm not a neutral person. And what am I gonna do if I just have to have nude tones all the time, everywhere? Like, have you seen my office? Have you seen my bathroom? Have you seen my house? Like, everything is pink everywhere. So how is that gonna work? And I remember I thought to myself, like, well, you know, Brittney, like, you're just gonna have to do it, because at the end of the day, that's what the people want to see, and you got to bring the people what they want to see, right? So I ended up like fully revamping my wardrobe, my office, everything to kind of have this neutral beige gray aesthetic that I did not love. I actually hated it. I felt like it removed the most important piece of me. And I felt like I was trying to shove myself into this box just to find what I thought my version of success was. And then a little bit of time went by and I started noticing I was attracting clients that actually did not relate to me at all whatsoever. A lot of the clients that I was working with, I was like, okay, like, where's our connecting ground? Like, where can we find that like human piece of both of us that just connects? And it was a struggle for me. It was really, really difficult. I also felt like when I was showing up on camera to film reels or talk to my audience in Instagram stories, I was like, I don't feel comfortable or confident in what I'm showing up as, because I felt like I was losing one of the biggest pieces of me. And I know you might be thinking like, it's just a color, like who cares? But at the end of the day, like everything about your brand, you have to be confident in so that you can show up with the utmost confidence for your audience, whatever that looks like. So one of my first rebrands, I ended up bringing one shade of pink into my palette. And I feel like actually I'm gonna find a version of my feed to show you this so you know what I'm talking about. I ended up bringing this one shade of pink into the palette, and I'm gonna tell you, instantaneously, I actually started to feel more aligned with my branding, with the way that I was showing up. Just from this one shade of pink, I was like, okay, I can do this. And I started adding like little pops of pink back into my office and things that inspired me that fit into my branding as well. And let me tell you, it was a really big eye-opener to me, because I started to realize that this one thing is what is actually making me unique. And the more that I kind of started to sprinkle these shades of pink into my palette, or to show up in a way that was organically to me, in a way that aesthetically was representing my brand, but also was representing me because I'm the face of my business and brand, the more that I started to feel like this is the right direction. I need to really go all in, and I need to really, really make sure that I fully feel confident in how I'm showing up and how my business and brand is showing up as well. And before you know it, we went into our last rebrand that I want to honestly say I can never see my color palette changing. Like, I swear to you, I am so happy with our branding and the way that it's settled now, because I feel like it is a full representation of not only myself, but the big picture vision that I had for my brand. And let me tell you, it is so funny how many people will submit an inquiry or want to work with us specifically because they're like, I love your branding. I love the way that you show up online. It is so confident. It is so outgoing and extra, and everything that I want to be as a female entrepreneur in my brand, that I need to work with you to help me bring that to life. So your vibe will attract your tribe. And I want you to really, it sounds cheesy, but I want you to really think about that, because the way that your visual aesthetic and you are going to show up is going to make the world of a difference of how your audience is going to perceive you. So start thinking about that, because in the next episode, when we dive into that piece of really thinking about where we want to go and the vision that we want to create and the aesthetic we want to jump into, this questionnaire is going to play a bigger part than you know. And last but not least, the final question, which is where you see yourself in 5 years. I want you to think about this really deep and hard and try to be as dramatic with it as you can. And I say that because a lot of the times when we're asked these questions, we filter our response. We think to ourselves like, you know something, that just sounds really out of the box for me. And we leave it out of the question or the answer because we think to ourselves it's unachievable. I really want you to go to this and think about this question when you're filling out the questionnaire. And I really want you to have an answer that scares you a little bit. It shouldn't be like so left field where you think, wait a second, this is literally never gonna happen. But it should be something that makes you kind of get that little feeling of butterflies and scares you just a teeny bit, so that you can feel inspired by it. Now that we've covered the basics of branding and creating your brand strategy, it's time to head to the descriptions box, download the questionnaire, take some time filling it out, because in the next episode, we're gonna be jumping into the juicy part, which is really creating your brand aesthetic and identity from scratch. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Stay social.